Good evening, everyone. My name's Andy Russell. I'm the provost here at SUNY Polytechnic Institute. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our campus for the launch of the Steve DiMeo Speaker Series. It's a true honor for SUNY Poly to host this event and a personal privilege for me as a proud member of the Mohawk Valley Edge board to help celebrate the legacy of someone who gave so much to this region. As some of you know, my background as an academic is in the history of technology, so I thought I'd kick off this speaker series with a little bit of historical context, namely the stories that we tell about Silicon Valley. Now I want to recap 3 different versions of the Silicon Valley story, and stick with me because there's a reason I'm doing this. The first version, the most popular version, is that startups popped out of garages in Palo Alto, creating the foundations of the microelectronics industry. These include Hewlett-Packard in 1939, Varian Associates in 1948, Shockley Semiconductors 1955, Fairchild Semiconductors 1957, Intel 1968, Apple 1976, and so on. The moral of that story is that entrepreneurs solve all the problems. The second version of the story I want to relate to you, a little more sophisticated, is that Stanford nurtured these startups. The hero of this story is Fred Terman, an electrical engineer who was a faculty member, dean of engineering from 1944 to 1958, and provost from 1955 to 1965. He's widely known as a mentor and early investor in Hewlett and Packard and a champion of Stanford Industrial Park, which founded in 1951, grew to have 75 companies and over 19,000 employees within 25 years. Now, this second story, the moral of the story, is one that I like because an academic administrator is the hero. And more than that, universities are uniquely the sources of brain power, and in Terman's telling of this story, that had more advantages for industrial development than proximity to markets, raw materials, or transportation, which is what was the conventional wisdom in the early 20th century. Now, the third version of the story is even more complex, and just to signal where my loyalties are, this is the one that I think makes the most sense. This features military and industrial investments in California starting as early as the 1910s in technologies such as radio and telegraphy, fueled by defense contracts. Companies like Varian, Lockheed, General Electric, Sylvania, and Zenith received cost-plus contracts, which meant no risk for startups or for new divisions of established East Coast companies that wanted to move west. It was this phenomenon that led my dissertation advisor, a historian named Stuart Leslie, to call the Department of Defense the biggest angel of them all. Now think of California as the site of angel investors, but the Department of Defense was the biggest angel of them all. So this military-industrial heritage in California in turn created a collaborative, technology-forward culture and a dynamic set of organizational capabilities that fueled growth over the long term, not the short term. It also built experience in California for different models of what we now call workforce development, that included contracting employees, immigrant workers, and connections with different types of academic institutions, not just the elite research university that Fred Terman wanted us to believe. So why am I telling these stories to this group at this point in time? I never had the opportunity to talk to Steve DiMeo about the history of Silicon Valley, but I could tell that he understood the complex elements required to grow an innovative regional ecosystem. I could see it, and we can all see it, in his actions. His ability to educate and align diverse stakeholders, to possess a long-term vision, and temperament and skill to bring people along and coax that vision into reality, and to make and remake strategic partnerships that are needed for sustainable innovation. And when I say remake, I think especially of our circumstances here at SUNY Poly and in the Marcy Nano Center, where we've undergone several different phases of transformation. So the second reason I wanted to lead off with this history lesson is because the speakers today represent different elements of the Mohawk Valley ecosystem and illustrate our own homegrown approach to technological innovation and regional economic development. It's authentic, It's real, and it's a consequence of many decades of effort, investment, and ingenuity. This speaker series honors Steve's enduring influence by doing what he did best, bringing people together and challenging them to think big and think together, and to think about how we get there from here. So I want to close with some words of appreciation to Mohawk Valley Edge, especially Shauna Papal and Mark Baracco, as well as my colleagues here at SUNY Poly, Andrea Legata, Wayne Westervelt, and our president, Wally Sobiejo. I want to especially thank Diane DiMeo, who is an inspiration to us all. This event helps support the DiMeo Educational Opportunities Fund, which removes barriers for students pursuing careers in skilled trades and technology. Scholarships already have been awarded to Proctor High School students, helping to build a stronger talent pipeline in the Mohawk Valley. And with your continued support, we can build the future through our students right here together in the Mohawk Valley. So thank you for being part of this moment, and I want to now turn it over to Shauna for some introductions.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for coming out. If most people know this who've known me or knew Steve, I worked for him for over 40 years. And I had that opportunity to come back to Mohawk Valley Edge and work with him. So Diane, Allison, Bobby, and everybody, thank you for sharing him with us. I was very fortunate that I probably saw a different side of Steve. He was not a patient person. He was very tenacious, and if he didn't like something, we heard about it. You might have gotten a long email from him about it. And those who knew him, probably received one. When we celebrated Steve a couple years ago for the Leading Edge Award, we started doing videos. And as we sat there and listened to the people he worked with over the years, I was moved, because it was amazing to see his impression and the influence he had on these people. And you start linking it together to the goals and objectives he had at Mohawk Valley Edge. He set the stage. He never gave up when, we started with Marcy Nano Center. It started in the 90s. I remember a Thanksgiving Day when, you get a call and Diane's shaking her head, but Steve didn't give up. And, we had the county who stuck with us through the whole thing. We brought the state along, and I think, the first time I went and sat and met Wooly, and, he sat back, he closed his eyes, and he pondered. And I'm thinking, what's he gonna say? And he proceeds to go, I wanna do something to celebrate Steve. And this is what came out of that pondering. It was bringing people together around topics near and dear to Steve's heart. The Air Force Research Lab. If anybody knows Steve, we fought Brack so hard. Steve fought Brack so hard. He had partners, and we have that asset here today, and it's so important to recognize it was a methodical process he went through. Why did we want to secure the lab? Think of all those jobs and the young people in our community that we want to go have an experience, go to college, but remember you have a place to come back. To be able to come back and work at Masonic Medical Research Lab. And I would bet a lot of people in our community don't know what they do. They know it's there, but I think it's important to hear the story, because we have cutting edge research here that's going to affect our lives. And it's going to affect our families' lives, our, the future generations. And what's important is we need to celebrate it. When Steve got sick, and we'd sit there, and talk after work, and he goes, well, when I retire, I want to go work with kids. I want to go read to them. And and I could picture him getting up, having his coffee, 3 or 4 cups, sending out a bunch of emails, and you're laughing. And he'd go to the library and want to sit and read to the kids. I don't know if he'd have the patience, and I can't tell you what he would read to them. It was probably a set of specs about putting the water in the sewer in at Marcy, but that's okay. And so, Steve always, enjoyed reaching out and working with young people. So to be able to come to this college campus and have students sitting among us listening is important. The Griffiss Institute was something Steve, worked with Ray Ertz, who used to be at the Air Force Research Lab Director, and others, and said, we need something that is an opportunity to help build a workforce, help take tech transfer out of the lab and, build businesses. And, he was always excited every year to hear how many resumes come in for the kids that come here during the summer. And I remember once being told we get over 700 resumes, probably you get a lot more now. And the Griffiss Institute has taken it to the next step. They've taken it to the position where we're bringing these people in, we're educating them of special skills, but we're integrating them into the community. And Steve would just be thrilled with that. And they have SUNY, when I pulled in tonight, I saw all the cars in the parking lot, and I was here before all of you, so it wasn't your cars. It was so exciting to see the parking lots filled. And I think that's just testament that the programs, the offerings here are just growing and expanding. Wooly has done such a great job, and we're disappointed he's not here tonight, but we thank Andy, your team, Wayne, and everybody for supporting us and putting us on. Your staff did a phenomenal job, so let's give them a round of applause, well deserved. So this is, as you can hear from my stories, very personal. I had that privilege of working alongside Steve. I remember when he passed away, I turned to the staff and I said, okay, everybody, pull your pants up, let's go. Look to your left, look to your right. He's in us. And what that meant is we had a job that we had to continue his vision and his effort. And I feel that the team we have, the partners we have, it is happening. So in partnership with SUNY Poly, the Institute here, it's always been central that this vision, together we're going to build a foundation for innovation, collaboration, and economic growth. And everybody, if you can't feel the growth we have going on in our community, I challenge you to come have coffee with me, because I'm going to tell you all the stories and all the great things we have going on. What I want you to walk away from tonight is, I want you to go tell somebody who doesn't know about Griffiss Institute, doesn't know something about the Air Force Research Lab, doesn't know something about SUNY Poly or the Masonic Medical Research. That's your job. You need to keep spreading the word of how exciting it is in our community and the opportunities we have. I'll be the first to admit we have challenges. Every community does, from workforce to housing to just, having the resources to sustain and grow. But I think Steve's story is so important. Stick with it. Be tenacious. Don't give up when a company says we're not coming. You just keep going and you get Wolfspeed. You get a Dan Foss. You foster those companies. And that's the belief that Steve brought to us. And we're doing a great thing by honoring him, by being here, being panelists. Thank you. Because what we have to do is continue that vision. And it's not for me, and it's not for these folks. It's for their kids. It's for Steve's grandchildren. It's for my children. It's so that we become a place people say, I want to go. What Steve and I always talked about was that younger generation sees our area very different than the past generations. And we have to embrace it. We have to tell our story of the community assets, the resources. So I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the panelists. I want to thank NISTEC. Mark Romano is somewhere here, and because I can't see, I want to thank you and give a shout out to NISTEC. They've been a great partner. Steve would be thrilled to have you be part of this. So thank you for sponsoring us this evening. Thank you all for being here and helping us honor Steve's legacy, not just in words, but through actions, partnerships, and progress. And Steve probably would be embarrassed that we're doing this. He want his name up there. I remember my daughter always saying, Steve, it shouldn't be SUNY Marcy Parkway, it should be Steve DiMeo Way. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not for me. So I think it's, we want to be sure people remember him and recognize the impact he had on this community. So our panelists are going to tell their stories, and it's rewarding to hear what Steve did through his career and his life are resulting in what these great stories you're going to hear tonight. So we have Heather Hage, President and CEO of the Griffiss Institute. Heather's going to also serve as moderator and host us for this evening. Thank you, Heather. Not a great person to do it. Mike Haydick, Deputy Director at the Air Force Research Lab. Mike, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it, and Steve would be very proud of what's happening at the lab. Bill Thurston from SUNY Poly Institute, thank you. And Maria Contreras, Executive Director of the Masonic Medical Research Institute. So we're excited for each of them to share their perspective on research, innovation, and the future of the Mohawk Valley. I do want to give a shout out to Mark Baracco and CJ Hanrahan from my staff. They did a great job pulling this together, so thank you, and I do appreciate it. So, Heather, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Shauna. Good evening, everybody. Can we please, I recognize we're here celebrating Steve, which we're all so happy to do, but I would also ask that we compliment Shauna because she stepped into enormous shoes to take over Edge, and you're doing a beautiful job. So thank you for everything you're doing for us. And before we get into the awesome questions that we're going to work on tonight, because I feel like I could talk to this group forever, but as moderator, I'm going to do my best to moderate myself and allow the rest of you to express your stories, and we'll see how that goes.
Do your best.
I know. The challenge coin is on the table. But before we do that, with the backdrop that both Dr. Russell, and thank you, beautiful job, Andy, with that storytelling about all the elements that could have, maybe did, give rise to Silicon Valley, as well as Shauna's comments. I would ask everyone, if you can, with a round of applause, please show your support tonight for all of the federal workers who are currently furloughed by the shutdown in the federal government, who are not at work, who are heading into a holiday season without being paid. And I don't know if we have any congressional staff with us tonight, but please get back to Washington and get the government running again. And important to note, that's so relevant to what we're going to talk about here tonight. Fun facts, and Shauna, I love that you challenged us all to go repeat a story about something we're learning tonight. So we'll do our best, and I know this group, and I know we can, challenge ourselves to be data rich in the stories that we tell and what we describe this evening. But interesting fact to know, last year alone, Rome Lab contributed $600 million in economic impact to the 5-county region that surrounds where we're sitting right now. So every day that the government is closed, number one, our brilliant scientists and engineers and mission support personnel who work at Rome Lab, 800 to 1,200 in total, depending upon how you count it, 800 to 1,200 in total, and all the people who rely upon them are not doing the work of building new technologies that secure our country. Second of all, they're not getting paid, and so there are families all over our community tonight and all over the United States right now who are heading into a holiday season suffering that hardship. So please keep them in your thoughts, your minds, and your prayers, and pay attention to what's happening in our American government. It's important that we use our voices to compel action, because the stars incline, but they do not compel. And with that, we will begin with a fun icebreaker in 3 minutes or less. Tell us about your organization and the coolest project you're working on right now. And Dr. Thistleton, I would like to begin with you, if you would.
I see you're reading, Heather. Two can
That's
play.
questions.
Two can play that game.
Yeah.
Just there are a bunch of names I want to make sure I say, and I do well as if it's my place to do this. I welcome everybody to SUNY Poly. I've been faculty here for just over 30 years. But I think there are people in the room, because I was watching up top, that have even longer relationships with SUNY Poly. And looking around, it's just very heartwarming to see all the folks here who have really built this place. One of the things we're talking about, I guess, is our organizations and how they've changed. And I've told this story before, but when I got here, Friday afternoon, it was very natural for Walter and Paul and I to go up and play basketball, and then we'd go to a restaurant, and this was wonderful. It was a nice time to be at SUNY Poly, SUNY IT back then. Now Friday afternoons are my colleagues and our graduate students up in our lab, and we're doing seminars, and the place has really changed remarkably. It's become, as we say, the New York's premier Polytech, premier, I've got it right here, premier public, I knew I was going to say that, premier public Polytech. It didn't get there by itself. Lots of people in this room have made that happen, as well as, I'm just going to say a few of the names. President Shoboyejo has been instrumental in the transformation of this institution. Andy Russell, Mark Montgomery, Mike Carpenter, Wayne Westervelt. These are people I'm working with all the time in my different roles around campus, and it's remarkable how this place is changing. It's really dramatic. One of the ways it's changing is with new programs. So I coordinate our master's degree in data science and analytics, but we're working with Matt Brigida, one of our business faculty, Andre Villela, Daniel Romero, to make a PhD in data science, and I think it's going to be data science and artificial intelligence, but we're working on a PhD program. That's something that I did not envision just a few years ago. And moving forward there, we're also working on a bachelor's program, but there are several emerging PhD programs on our campus. Computer science, I believe, over in engineering. And again, this is something you wouldn't have seen a few years ago. There are, in addition to the programmatic developments, there are 12 new centers on campus. So there are centers in the humanities, there are centers in engineering. With my co-director, Steve Schneider, and we have a center for AIX. And I saw Chuck Green here before, so I'm going to be careful on making the X not sound like an S. So AIX, the Artificial Intelligence Exploration Center. And this is there are different components to it, but we're really working very hard to engage local companies, local governments. There's a laboratory which is more of a generative AI. This is the folks like myself writing computer code. There's an accelerator, and we have contracts already with various government and business entities doing things like workforce development. And there's a studio that studies in a very profound way the human AI system. And as I say, we are one center of 12. The center has some guests, and so Tala Folaronoroso and Adebayo Adeboyega are both here from Nigeria. And they're part of the National Universities Commission. It's delightful to be working with them in drones, in agriculture, in other aspects of AI. Just a lot of really incredible activity going on. I can keep going. You stop me if I start going too long.
Is that the coolest project you're working on right now? If you've answered that
It's
question,
close.
then I'll turn to Dr. Contreras, perhaps. Then
It's not.
You're-
You should give me 2
done.
seconds. I'll just say real
But
quick.
2 seconds.
The coolest project I'm working on is a $4 million proposal for Department of Defense in AI, foundational AI, foundation models, and again, other aspects of artificial intelligence. I'll stop.
No, that is very cool. I'm
Yeah,
glad we got it out of you.
It's
All right,
fabulous.
Dr. Contreras, Maria, tell
you.
us more about your organization and what the coolest thing you're working on right now.
Thank you, Heather. And it's a pleasure to be here today. So thank you for the opportunity, to Mark, Shauna, Heather, for the chance to represent the Masonic Medical Research Institute. So we have actually a 67-year history. So we were originally founded by, governed by, supported by the Grand Lodge of the state of New York. So when I got here, we had been called the Hidden Gem. And I always thought that was really interesting, that it was hidden, even though it's been here for 67 years. So I'm here to tell you we're not hidden, we're just a gem. And we just want to highlight, I think, some of the reasons why I think this is such a tremendous opportunity for the community. So first of all, we focus on a lot of different areas of research. We have a history of focusing on an area of research called electrophysiology, which is basically the mechanics of the heart. So it ties into SUNY Poly, it ties into the Air Force Lab, it ties into Griffiss a little bit. But we've expanded that work. We actually do a lot of science now focused on trying to understand mechanisms that cause cardiovascular disease, all areas of cardiovascular disease, from children to adult stage heart failure. We study autism, and we study autoimmunity. The goal of the MMRI is to really do basic science to understand what causes these diseases and then find ways to better treat them or even find cures for these disorders. Some of the most exciting things that we've been working on, I think, of late, and I'm only one of 6 amazing faculty that have been recruited to the MMRI. We're now 55 people that work at the Institute. And we focus, our lab is specifically really excited about focusing on some of the potential curative ways that we can treat diabetes-associated heart failure and also obesity itself. So we just published a really nice article on this. We think we have some better tools to be able to combat diabetes and obesity that would be better than some of the things that are out in the market that many of you know about without side effects. That's something hopefully we will be working on with Griffiss to be able to manifest and work on creating a biomedical hub right here in the Mohawk Valley. The goal is to really collaborate with the institutes that we are excited to be a part of, including SUNY Poly, including the Air Force Base, which we are doing some AI technologies with, and also the Griffiss Institute, because we think we have an opportunity for creating for-profit entities that will tie all of our communities together.
Rock on. And Maria, humble brag for MMRI, you were published in Nature this year. So as you learn about what scientific communities value and some of the indicia that really matter to the prowess of a research organization, that's one of the, being published in a major peer-reviewed journal like that is a really big deal. And congratulations to you for that, because that's wonderful.
Thank you.
And your rockstar team.
Thank you.
Dr. Haydick, how about you? What's the coolest thing you're working on?
All right. So a little bit about the history of the lab. Let's start with that. So first off, thank you to Shauna and Mark and CJ for the invite to be here tonight. It's just a huge honor. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how much I looked up to Steve, and we'll get into more of that later on. But the history of the lab, so Rome Air Development Center was started in 1951. The Air Force moved the lab up from New Jersey. It was Watson Labs at the time. We became Rome Air Development Center, headquartered at Griffiss Air Force Base, beginning 1951. We remained RADC until 1991, so 40-year history there. In 1991, the Air Force reorganized and took a lot of their individual smaller labs and formed 4 super labs. That's when Rome Laboratory was born, hence the name Rome Labs. That's stuck with us, and it's just a great brand that I absolutely love. 6 years we were Rome Labs, but we still are known for that. In 1997, the Air Force took those 4 super labs, put them under the umbrella of the Air Force Research Laboratory, and we became the Information Directorate, one of 9 technology directorates within AFRL. And a little bit about what we do and maybe some of the coolest projects. At the Air Force Research Laboratory Information Directorate, as the name implies, we work on information technologies. So if you think about it, we're developing and delivering game-changing technologies and things like command and control, communications, computing, cyber technologies, intelligence technologies, kind of the C5I brand, as we call it. If you peel that back a little more, that goes down to things like quantum computing, neuromorphic computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, terahertz communications. A lot of those technologies that fall into that. There's so many things. It's like picking your favorite children, though, like who's your favorite, right? And I have a few engineers here tonight, so I'm going to probably insult people, but I mentioned a few there. But I think one of the coolest things that's making a huge impact right now is counter-drone or counter-UAS technologies. We started working on this 10 years ago, so it's not like it just happened, right? We thoughtfully went into this small SBIR program. Our engineers really developed this, hatched this from ground up. And all of a sudden, it just started growing and growing and growing and snowballed. And we became the resource not only for the U.S. Air Force, but really for the Department of Defense and the nation in some senses in terms of what we're doing in counter-UAS technologies. And you see what's happening in the world right now, in Russia and Ukraine especially. That area is only going to get bigger for us. And it's such an important job because we're making an impact now, but we're also looking at further term, as technologies mature, the enemy gets better, right? It's a cat and mouse game, and we're going to continue to develop that. But it's just a rich area for us, and I'm so proud of our team.
Can we give you 30 extra seconds to tell the PlayStation story?
The PlayStation story,
Yes.
sure.
It's just so good.
Yeah, so this goes back to one of our previous chief scientists, Dr. Rich Linderman. So back in about 2008 or 9, there was the Cell BE processor, which is part of the PlayStation 3 system. And that was a collaboration between IBM, Toshiba, and Sony to develop those Cell BE processors. And it was really an early form of graphical processing units, or GPUs, which are so critical in AI technologies now. Rich was just a visionary, right? And he just put things out there and just had people follow him and go and do it. But he saw a way for these clusters, the Cell BE processor, to do things in computing that couldn't be done right now easily, and on the cheap. Rich was a very cheap person, so he loved on the cheap. And what he did is we started with 300 PlayStation. The reason why don't you just buy the chip? Well, the chips were very expensive. IBM was selling them, but you could get them much cheaper in a console, right? You could go to essentially Best Buy and buy for a couple $100, $300, I think at the time, buy a PS3. So we started out with about 300 PlayStations, and for a small number, dollar amount, put them together, ganged them all together, parallelized them, wiped off the operating system, put Linux on there, and showed that we could make real advancements in things like situational awareness for space, neuromorphic computing, how to actually use the architecture of the brain to make decision level quality decisions much faster than could be done with other processors. So that was a success. Good news, bad news, right? So branch chief here had to figure out, all right, now we're going to expand this. So we went up to 1,700 PlayStations. And you can still Google it, all right? And look out there, Air Force, how much money we're wasting and how many video games we're playing. And it actually came with, these PlayStations that we bought, 1,763. Don Hansen was our director at the time, and we made sure that Don signed off on it, right? So he knew what the hell was going on, right? But that led to a lot of conspiracy theories and all sorts of stuff. Air Force engineers are playing video games. At the time, it came with Spider-Man movie, right? So we're watching movies, all that good stuff. But we brought them in, we put them together, and there was a lot of infrastructure that needed to be created, right? Because they run hot, they generate a lot of heat. So we had them on baker's racks and just a room full of PlayStations. But it was just such a great learning experience. And our engineers put it together. And it was just a huge success in a lot of ways. One, it became the DoD's largest interactive supercomputer at the time. So not the fastest supercomputer. I think it was about 10th on the list for fastest supercomputers. But if you send a job to it, it would instantly spit it out. And the applications I talked about just were amazing, right? And then I think one of the biggest things that came out of it, when you brought a group through of visitors or students, man, their eyes just absolutely lit up when he could show them PlayStations and what could be done and what science was done. And that was great for a few years, and we had a lot of great results, published results. But the technology, the chip technology, which we'll get into, moves so fast. Within a few years, one of our chief engineers on it, Morgan Bishop, and Mark Barnell, the other engineer, showed me, all right, we could take what was in these 1,700 PlayStations and we're actually shrunk down into a rack. But I think that was just really goes to the creativity and put your mind to it of our engineers.
One of my aha moments in coming to this job at Griffiss Institute over almost 5 years ago, believe it or not, was that when I began traveling to other defense ecosystems so that we could learn from other ecosystems across the country how they're seeing good effects from translation of R&D into new ventures that can help the economy, is the story that's attached to that. So I will say, I'm Heather and I come from Griffiss and we're an intermediary for Rome Lab. And they're like, Rome Lab, those guys bought 20,000 PlayStations and put them in a room.
1,763.
It wasn't quite 20,000, but yes. Yeah. So we're this region, it was a fun thing to experience actually as a boomeranger who lived elsewhere and came back to this community, how this region is perceived in defense communities all over the place for the incredible style of innovation that our lab practice. I think that's just an awesome example of innovation.
And a fun fact there, now that the area that had that was the Noreski lab, named after a famous scientist, Joe Noreski. That's now actually home to our quantum labs.
Oh, that's
great.
We'll great history of that area of the lab. I'll answer the question last, and what's the coolest thing we're working on right now? I would say the coolest thing the GI is working on right now is with all of the people and the organizations sitting right here and right now, We've been working on a plan out to 2030. We call it Blueprint 2030 because we think it would be a lie to say a plan would do right now with the level of disruption in technology and in the world right now, but a set of outcomes that we want to hit by 2030. And as part of that plan, working with the incredible intellectual R&D powerhouses that are represented on this stage and across the community here in the region, we intend to support 25 startups a year and raise a $25 million venture fund to help those companies grow. And that's going to mean more opportunities, more outstanding, beautiful technologies like those that go out and impact human health and welfare and the cures and the therapies that Maria's team works on, and the unbelievable, game-changing, forward-leaning information technologies and command and control technologies that come out of Rome Lab, and figuring out how we mash those up in an interdisciplinary way so our local students, whether they be truly natives who choose to come to SUNY Poly or attend Hamilton College or MVCC or any of our local schools, or come from elsewhere all over the world, because we have the blessing to have outstanding academic institutions where young people from all over the world come here to learn and to grow, and we have the opportunity to capture their attention and get them involved in projects like this. And so at Griffiss, that is by far the coolest thing we're working on right now. I can't wait to do that with all of you and all of you. How does research and innovation, think about the things we're talking about, amazing science and advancing activities that advance the state of the art in a particular domain and maybe produce new technologies, how does that advance the economy here in the Mohawk Valley? And I'll let whomever wants to jump in go first.
I can start this time. So for us, I would say it's a fourfold piece. The first is the recruitment of great talent. So I think within the community, but also bringing people from outside the community. I have a great team of people here supporting me. Say hi, everybody. Yeah. They're all here because they believe in the mission and the vision of the institution, and they care about this community. So I think bringing them to this region is vibrant for the community because they not only come and bring their families, they bring spouses that are also going to be integrated, and they're usually educated in one of these fields, so they're going to be looking for jobs at some of our neighboring collaborators, and bringing vibrancy and great energy and excitement to the community, and also economic gain. The second thing I think that's really important is the collaboration piece. I think the ability to create opportunities where research, innovation, education, and technologies can all come together to create something much bigger than each of our individual pieces is an opportunity for this Mohawk Valley. And that's something that I think we're going to talk about a little bit more today. The third piece is education. So we're very keen on teaching the next generation of scientists. We have a summer fellowship program that brings in, I think, about 10 to 20 kids from our local community to come in and do a 10-week science program. They come in very terrified about the idea of what kind of science they're going to do, not understanding anything, and giving a PowerPoint presentation at the end of 10 weeks where they have become experts in a particular project, some of which actually we have a couple of students who are going to be innovators in some of the for-profit opportunities that we're going to be developing in the future. These are young kids who have fallen in love with science and technology, who are staying in our community or coming back into our community to make a difference. And the last piece is that innovation piece. I think being able to create a biotech hub in this area, which could be the Mohawk Valley, not the Silicon Valley, the Mohawk Valley, that will have a similar connotation in 10 years, I think is our vision and dream, and hope that we can do that by working with many of the partners that are in this room.
Beautiful. Maybe then, I feel like that was a fabulous comprehensive answer. Unless you gentlemen have something you'd like to add to that, I would say we jump forward to talking about where we see our community in 10 years.
Sure.
And what role do you think your organization has in driving that future?
So yeah, I'm happy to start with that. I love this question. It's given me a chance to really think and put my thinking cap and imagine where I think we're going to be in 10 years. And who really knows? But you can think maybe back where we were and now where we're going forward. But I see us as continuing to develop a very diverse economy in our Mohawk Valley region. I think we're going to talk high tech here, but the addition of Chobani is huge for us, right? The high quality jobs that Chobani is providing and then the spin-offs with, you know, bringing in the dairy supply, the milk, and all that's going to come out of it, and all the other things that it's going to drive in terms of housing and education. I think it's just an amazing, and shout out to Edge for pulling that deal off. Holy cow. Literally, holy cow, I like that. And then the second piece would be, you know, the high-tech piece, right? This is where it really start thinking about where, you know, we all fit into this. And certainly for the lab, I think there's going to be a few things that I'd love to see, and I think we're going to continuing to really build our drone technology area here. I think the drone corridor that we have, being one of the 6 UAS test sites, I think we can really continue to develop that. The drone testing at Skydome is really going to take off, and the development of companies around drone technologies are going to be key. And then quantum, right? This will be the first time I'll really mention quantum, but I would love to see, you know, the development of a quantum network across New York State. We're starting to see some momentum growing in that, but I think that would just be a really R&D driver that would bring us into a real conversation of quantum in the U.S. and what the Mohawk Valley can really do. And I think there's going to be so much around that. And then finally, you know, the continued growth and just the uplifting in the area in terms of, you know, the services and the growth of just the quality of life in this area, I think are just really in 10 years going to continue. You know, we have, Shauna mentioned it, right? We have our issues, sure, just like any other regional area or metropolitan area. But, you know, we'll take those challenges on, but I think we'll be in a better place 10 years from now. I'm so excited.
Me too. Dr. Thistleton?
Poly has traditionally done a decent job of integrating its faculty and its students into the local economy. But I think there are a couple big changes. And one, Poly is drawing from, it used to be much more local, regional, you could say. And now we're drawing students from in fact, internationally, but from all over New York State especially. And seeing them get out into the economic opportunities that are here in the Mohawk Valley is terrific. But I think as we develop these PhD programs, we're going to have a lot of talent. There are going to be a lot of students who are looking for projects, a lot of faculty who are looking for projects, and we're problem solvers. And the more we can integrate into our local companies, the better.
Beautiful.
So from a selfish perspective, I kind of see the Masonic Medical Research Institute becoming a household name like the Gladstone or the Salk Institute, which hopefully all you know. If you don't, you should know. They're famous research institutions. But I think that we should be a household name in 10 years. We are already establishing ourselves as a premier, worldwide, internationally acclaimed research institution right here in Utica. And I think that we have opportunity to really develop that more as we find more therapies and treatments and we publish more publications on the work that we do. From a community standpoint, I kind of view Utica as Pittsburgh from like the 1980s. I don't know if you guys remember that Pittsburgh was an emerging economy at that time, kind of like Utica from a manufacturing background. But now, if you visit Pittsburgh, it's an enormously beautiful, successful, international city. What changed in that time period is innovation. And it brought with it a healthy community of academia, industry, science, and technology into that one space. And I think 10 years from now, a lot is changing. What we know today as what we think is going to happen in the future is happening so fast with AI technology. I think we really need to embrace some of these changes and think about how our own organizations can actually morph into something that's going to be competitive with what's happening across the country and around the world. So thinking about what those next visionary changes might look like and how we can come together to work on those things as a community, I think will be what will make us successful in 10 years.
Beautiful. Awesome answers. I would only add to the vision that the three of you have painted together from the GI's perspective. I would love to see, compatible with each of your visions, but thousands more scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs, both homegrown that are like lifelong, dedicated, loyal Mohawk Valley people, as well as others who find a happy home here coming from elsewhere. And I believe we're we're really well positioned and poised to attract young communities based on some of our quality of life indicators. And look at many of us, we've all come here to build our families for some of those reasons, in addition to the awesome careers we get to have in science and tech. So painting that picture for young people in our community. I grew up here in the 80s and 90s. And at that time, we were suffering a period of deindustrialization. And the message we got as kids growing up here in the Mohawk Valley was, get yourself educated. We got great schools, so get yourself educated and get out of here. And I hope we never send that message to a young person in this community ever, ever again. So that's what 2035 looks like for me.
Can I just add one thing
Please,
to that?
of course.
I would say something that is a huge recruitment tool for our institution is the quality of life here.
Yeah.
5-minute commutes. I lived in Boston for 15 years. 7 miles took 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on whether there was a Red Sox game, construction, or a gas explosion. So those are the kinds of things that make such a difference in people's lives. The schools are incredible here, the community, the people. So I use these as tools to bring people into this region. And we've recruited from San Diego to Utica. We've recruited from Boston. We've recruited from Midwest. I mean, people really want to come here because the quality of life is great.
Yeah. That's evidenced, Shauna, you mentioned at the outset, we're always tracking the numbers of interns that apply just to the programs at Griffiss. And for context, we're about 20% of the regional, the Mohawk Valley market share of other educational activities, internships, fellowships, activities like that we do in partnership with Rome Lab and MMRI and Poly, and actually 40 companies here in the region and in broader areas. And this past year, we employed 450 interns in 40 companies. Wow. So, and the interest area, there are some programs, they're kind of bifurcated or divided, but we're seeing some programs that have a selectivity rate of like 10%, so 1,000 applications to 50 or 60 positions. So know that that interest is real, and I think what's up to us to continue to coordinate through the things that we do and we all do together, folks in this room and others, is figure out how we make that an attractive and a seamless pathway for people to come and enjoy this community. And if they try out one experience at, I think Chuck's here, at AIS, and then want to go to Rome Lab the next year or make a transition to another partner in the region, we treat that as a great thing and continue to work on that together. So I think that interest, that energy is so very real. So how have our organizations changed over the course of history? We were talking about organizations, many of whom founded, we're 23 years old, you're 67 years old, Rome Lab is 60, 70 years old around the same time frame.
About 75. Yeah.
SUNY Poly evolved
40,
from,
45?
right?
How old are we? I don't know.
So how have we changed? How have we changed over time from where we began a mission or a vision and where we are today, and what are the drivers of some of that change? There's a lot happening right now that's changing things for sure.
So when I got here, the lab was not allowed to use the words, "That's how we've always done it." So banning that phrase actually helped evolve the institution into what we've become today. There's resistance, people like the way things always were, but you have to be a rolling rock. You have to continuously change and morph with the times. And I think the biggest success of an organization is really being able to keep up with the technology and what's changing and embracing it and not being afraid of it.
Beautiful.
I will say, when I came here, SUNY Poly, it was a lovely place, but in some sense, we were defined by a lot of our constraints. There were, I came here as a young faculty and I had all these ideas, and I was told in, a variety of ways, nah, that's not going to work out. No, you shouldn't be thinking about that. And now it's just the opposite. With the 12 centers, we're being encouraged to think so expansively, build relationships anywhere you can, other universities, companies. It's remarkable, the difference.
Yeah, for us, it's been pretty clear. It's easy to look at it like our history wall, or I give the RI information director an overview or history, just how the lab has changed through the years, starting at RADC and doing a lot of Cold War era technologies, a lot of early, communication technology, early computing technologies, and then keeping pace with the technologies and then really kind of moving, into like we were really world famous in electronics reliability at one point. But then, that technology changed. It became very commercially available and readily and just, very reliable. So we moved out of that. And then really moving towards software kind of things. And, we became very famous in the information director for cyber technologies, kind of invented information warfare technologies. But, we always think about, all right, what's next? What's coming after that? And it's, ended up not being that hard to figure out, right? So things that, we invested in early have, certainly played out. We used to, one of our previous directors, George Duchek, Dr. Duchek, used to have a great slide in there. He didn't come up with the phrase, but it's out there, right? It takes 30 years to be an overnight success. And it just shows you have to invest early. So technologies like quantum, neuromorphic, other forms of communications, AI, of course, right? Having those early investments have paid off for us, and they're going to continue to grow. And then the world around us has changed, right? So we've gone certainly from Cold War to global war on terror, now to threats with Russia, China, North Korea, et cetera, right? That we have to combat, that are putting a lot of money into it, the technology, and we have to, pretty much do the same and keep pace and be better than that technology development. Not just keep pace, absolutely have to be better.
Always changing all the time.
All the time.
Who said change before you have to? Wasn't Steve, somebody who wrote a great leadership, one of those leadership books that I read the front and back of and not the middle. So I guess reflecting upon that for Griffiss, I would say what's changed for us, we were born in the wake of 9/11 as a response to the threats happening in the world, and this idea that there could be a nonprofit organization that would act as an intermediary on behalf of Rome Lab, which was present at the time, the defense industrial base community that had grown up around Griffiss Air Force Base and the lab, as well as our academic institutions here in the Mohawk Valley, across New York State and across the country. And when I came to the GI 5 years ago, I think it took the GI a while from the time it was formed to find its footing as an intermediary for Rome Lab and get great at doing core technology transfer services, like building intellectual property that comes out. So if a scientist or engineer, like one sitting in the front row, right here to my right, and another one sitting over there, creates something wonderful at Rome Lab, and that thing has potential commercial value, it's the responsibility of the GI to help cultivate the IP portfolio around that, and then find ways to transfer that concept or that prototype or that invention over to a commercial partner that can actually turn it into a product or a service that can go out there and change the world. And if we do that extraordinarily well and all the winds are in our favor, we also make money as a part of that. But that's a high-risk game. It's a high-risk activity, and it takes a long time to get it right. I'm very proud to share with you this year, disclosures at Rome Lab are up 800% over last year through the partnership with the GI and Rome Lab, so that's great. But so one way I think that we've changed, at least recently, is by the opening of Innovari Advancement Center, which is now 4 years old. And we opened in an effort to welcome the academic and industrial community in, to look for non-traditional partners, because Rome Lab does non-traditional things, to work on game-changing innovation, especially in spaces where domestic talent was hard to access and to reach. So an outside of the fence, outside of the classified environment facility to do that. But that point being, that was one huge step forward in getting that facility open with the support of our county executive and EDGE and so many other organizations. But then in bringing the community in, we discovered hundreds of other pathways that we could be successful in powering the regional economy and our community forward by doing things like taking those ideas and translating them into new companies. And we've invested now in 26 companies that are commercializing technologies that are traceable to roots in Air Force technology and things like that. So that's one of the big ways we changed. We were sort of like, holy cow, we've been doing this, like you said, for 20 years. Maybe there's a whole new chapter that we could write for the organization that could do more for the community that we care about so much and that we love. So pivotal moments or breakthroughs as leaders that you've experienced on the way to success for your organization?
So I'll start on that one. So as I was thinking about this, what are the big things for us? We have to talk about what's next, right? So we've been so many things, but cyber was one, and then quantum came about. Well, how did quantum come about? Pivotal moment, 2017, China launched the Messiah satellite, which was a quantum communication satellite. And stuff hit the fan, we'll say, at that point in the US, right? There was a lot of just from the top levels in the Air Force that filtered down to us, to my General Cooley, AFRL commander, to my boss. You know, what are we doing in quantum? Is China ahead of us? Why is China ahead of us? Are they ahead of us? All this, and had to react pretty quickly and came up, no, we actually are investing. But that became very pivotal because it then led us to develop not only what are we doing in Rome in quantum, but what are we doing across AFRL in quantum, which led to my involvement in quantum. It led to us developing a quantum strategy. It led to us really developing quantum across AFRL, and it just really snowballed off after that. And it led to us to being at the table at very large events, at the White House, national levels. We really put Rome on the map. It then allowed us to get a lot of congressional support, which built our program, built new labs, and it's just brought in so many people to the lab. So it's been the equipment, it's been the talent, it's been the development at Innovari. It's all come together so nicely. So that was an absolute seminal, pivotal moment for us.
Awesome.
Well, one of the big things at Poly over the last year or so was the creation, 2 years, was the creation of these centers. And it's a little bit like a swimming pool. You don't really need a swimming pool to invite your neighbors over, but it really becomes so much easier if you have a pool. Everybody just wants to come. And so through the center, we're continually having faculty from all across campus come and give talks. Emilio, one of our physicists, came to talk to us about intelligence. How do you recognize intelligence? Obviously, it's an AI center, so we're sort of geared in that direction. One of our civil engineering colleagues came to discuss machine learning. Our students every week are presenting. We've had so many people wanting to present that we've had to cut everybody down to 5 minutes. Just you get 5 minutes, do your thing, and go through. It also made it much easier when we were pursuing this. $4 million is game-changing for an institution like ours, especially because with the DoD proposal, especially because we feel like it's just the foot in the door, and we're going to really move on from that. And having these centers made it so easy when we were building teams. Poly is prime on this contract, and 2 of our subs are the University of Maryland system and USF, University of South Florida. And having these centers made building teams for the 14 projects that are being enacted through this potential contract made it so much easier. You didn't have to go and hunt for people. You knew who everybody was.
So Heather, you call it pivotal moments. I call it embracing challenges. So for us, our changes and our pivotal moments have occurred as a consequence of necessity in part, but also moving with the tide. So when I got here, I mentioned the MMRI was very famous for electrophysiology. It was a very specialized niche in one particular area of cardiovascular research. We pivoted and we expanded that course of work to focus on all those areas of cardiology I mentioned, but also autism and lupus, which was a huge change for MMRI. But we have been successful at that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about autism later if anyone wants to talk about that. But more recently, I would say for us, a pivotal moment is in the challenges we are facing with funding. And for those of you in academia, in particular, maybe the Air Force Base, although you guys are probably getting all of our research dollars at the moment, but research is actually under fire. And the government is actually questioning a lot of the research efforts that we have made. I think it's dangerous because what affects us today may not seem that important, but it's actually going to be a cog in the wheel of progress 10 years from now when people are facing diseases and there aren't any new discoveries and innovations that are happening because we stopped that work. So how do we deal with that? We have pivoted. And we are working with Heather a little bit prematurely, I would offer, but without a choice to have to move into sort of for-profit entities. So Carolyn Bertuzzi, who's a Nobel laureate who won for click chemistry a few years ago, said something really important. And she said, scientists don't do what we do for the money or for the fame. We do it because we do research and we deliver something to humanity. And that gift that we give to humanity, which isn't a tangible asset, is something that will live on beyond our years. And so for a not-for-profit to do science, it's altruistic in many ways, but having to pivot to this for-profit component because we have to is a little uncomfortable. And Heather and I have talked a little bit about this, but a necessity to keep what we care about alive. And so that is something that for us as a small organization, to stay sustainable, we have to constantly be changing. So pivotal moments can be positive. I won't argue that, but really for us, they're kind of having to do out of necessity.
And there is a sustainable business model in there. I mean, we're preparing to embark upon, and those in the room who are involved, or if you're not yet, please get involved. There is a sustainable, socially oriented, and regionally anchored enterprise that exists in what we believe. We'll see what the future brings us, but what we believe we can do together. But it is going to mean a tremendous amount of change on all of our parts and all those representatives of the companies and the community-based organizations that are here with us in the room to move in that direction. But it is true that the key to our resiliency and the sustainability of the science and engineering programs that deliver, and the talent that deliver new technologies, that form the basis of new companies, and for those new companies to grow in places like this will require that we all begin to behave differently. And there's a lot in front of us, but it's very exciting. And if we keep augmenting each other and championing each other, I think one of the most unique things about this region, for a community of a couple 100,000 people, right, we have truly outsized innovation assets in one of the world's leading information technology laboratories that's anchored by the Department of Defense, and in one of the, I will say as someone who has spent an entire career in technology transfer, an independent biotechnology laboratory that's nestled in the community where you are and focused so squarely on translational medicine in disease states that are some of the most pervasive in this country is an unbelievable blessing. And so for us to have the opportunity in a community that is small like we are to navigate those spaces and to embark upon this crazy adventure that we're going on to build up 25 companies a year is possible. It's bold and audacious and absolutely possible. And we're excited. I'll stop talking about that. I know I'm supposed to be moderating. Okay, now should we play Say It in 6? I think we're getting close to time, Mark. Are you getting the hook? Okay, so Say It in 6. Did everybody do their homework for this exercise?
Actually, wrote it down.
You wrote yours down? Okay, I'll let everybody get their notes out for a second. So this is fun. I make up these challenge problems so that we can play games on stage.
I can say it in 5.
Okay, shoot, Maria, go for it.
I pretty much said
Why
it.
the Mohawk Valley is a research and innovation hub of the future. Go.
Okay, I think it's because of the people, it's because of the community, the educational opportunities, the collaborations, and the innovation that's possible working together as a team.
Beautiful. Mike, you
All
got it
right,
up?
all right. So, interesting, we heard some of these themes earlier, but they did write this down earlier. So, all right. Long-term vision, reinvention, resiliency, and my favorite word of all time, grit.
Oh, grit's a good one.
That's a great word.
I had an artificial intelligence center, so obviously I went to Gemini to get something, say, in 6, because I wanted to reach outside of what I sort of normally think about. Gemini came up with semiconductors, cybersecurity, UAS, research, leadership, and I think that's all fine, but I think I need to put artificial intelligence and education in there as well.
So that was like 25 and not 6, but it's okay. You're an academic, so we're going to let you get away with it. My 6 are talent, technology, ventures, win the future. And it's beautiful that none of us knew each other's answers to that question, but how beautifully compatible all of those answers were. I know we need to wrap up, Mark, so before we do that, we're here tonight to celebrate community, to share, to tell stories, to talk about the importance of research, innovation, and engineering to our regional economy. But we're also here to honor our longtime friend and colleague and amazing community leader, Steve DiMeo. And so can I ask each of you to first reflect on someone whose leadership helped shape the ecosystem we're talking about? So we talked about maybe a mentor or a leader of note, and then if you want to share a story about Steve as a part of that, that would be lovely as well. And anybody who wants to go first may go first.
I think it's hard to pick one person. I think there are a lot of mentors and sponsors in the room and across the country that we've each had. For me, actually, I find it super impressive how many female leaders there are in this community, which is seemingly kind of an old-fashioned community. So I'm embracing that, and I'm enjoying learning from my colleagues.
Beautiful.
So I'll jump. So I put this on my phone as well, right? So not to cheat, not to miss anyone here, but similar to what Maria said, I can't think of just one person as a mentor. We have so many great leaders in this area, and I think about and there's some in the audience today who just built just amazing companies. Chuck Green from AIS. Pat Baskinger, MC from AX Enterprise, Ross Bernstein from Indium, Shauna, all she's done with Steve and developing Griffiss in the local area. And then transformative leaders, right? I'd put at the top Tony Pacenti and what he's done with our region and our county and just pulling everything together and constantly just challenging people to go out there. You two, Maria, Heather, you guys are absolutely amazing for what you've done to transform your different organizations. And the last person I would put out there who really deserves a shout out is Alicia Dix and all she's done at the Community Foundation to really help transform not only that organization, but in times of need and really moving the community forward in different areas. We talk about wraparound services or quality of life. And the truth be known, I'm on the Community Foundation board, but just seeing how she's transformed that organization and the way she leads and drives change has just been absolutely amazing. Story about Steve, I guess that was part of it as well. So there's a lot of these, right? So first and foremost, the lab wouldn't be here without Steve. Shauna hit upon it. Steve fought to save us along with Ray Ertz. Ray Ertz went above and beyond, put his neck out there. Couldn't do that nowadays in the Air Force, but he did that along with Steve. And we have a really good thing here. It's more than good. We have a great thing here with the Information Directorate. A lot of other places want the Information Director or have wanted it in the past, and there have been multiple times the lab has almost moved, and it's just been very challenging times. But a couple times in particular, especially when the base went away, we lost those services. To put together a standalone facility, it was just a monumental challenge. But Steve, along with Ray, did it, and I'll be forever thankful for that. And if I can do a little part to carry that forward, that I think I'm doing them well. And then my second quick story is, as I came up through the ranks, when I became deputy director, I got a call from Steve and Shauna about this company coming, and it was called Project Apollo. And to meet with this company, couldn't tell me what it was, but I felt truly honored that they wanted to learn about the lab, the company that was coming here, as part of the region and the importance of the lab. Turns out, in the end, right, we found out it was Wolfspeed, but Steve asking me meant a lot to represent the lab and to be there. And so again, forever thankful. And finally, Steve, one of my last conversations, told me about this book called Chip Wars and recommended it to me. And I'm in the process of reading it, and it's just been absolutely amazing with the history. I bore the hell out of my wife when I tell her stories from it and start citing history and the different technologies, even though she's an engineer. But it just really hits to, I think, a lot of Steve's vision in the history and ties in well with what was talked about earlier with Andy.
Nice. Story about Steve?
Well, I'll speak to the mentor thing first, and then by the time you put a career together, there are a lot of people who have helped you along the way. At Poly, Mike Hochberg was my mentor for years. Many of you may know him. Chuck Green is in the audience. I saw him as a leader. He was marvelous. Wole Shobiejo, if you ever get a chance to travel with your boss, I think you should do it. And Wole and Steve and several others, and I last spring went to Ghana, and international travel is difficult, and you can become tired, and you actually, I think, you see people with their guard down at that point. But Wole was terrific about working in a foundational way to help our institution and other institutions move forward and try to make as many connections as possible. I don't know if Ray Durso is in the audience tonight, but I got to work with him a little bit with Mohawk Valley Genesis Group, and he was instrumental at bringing so many people from different walks of life together, finance, academia, et cetera, and those meetings I thought were just terrific. As far as Steve, I didn't know Steve, but I mentioned to a few of my friends that I would be here, and the stories just started coming up, and the warmth. You know, one person, my friend Tony, who's a drummer, said, "Oh yeah, we grew up in the same neighborhood. I knew him. He was a great guy." And another one of my friends, Ken, who worked with Steve for, I guess, 15 years, essentially said, you know, there wasn't one really important thing happening here that he was not a part of. And he was, you know, he was texting me, but I could already tell he was getting teary-eyed as he was texting me. It was beautiful.
So I had the opportunity to meet Steve and Shauna as part of Mohawk Valley Edge. I can describe him in 2 words, innovative and thoughtful leader. And I think he brought the community together in a way that I think we could all learn from. So I'm happy to see that his legacy is continuing. I'd love to see this continue into Utica and the surrounding area to create the Mohawk Valley of innovation in the future. So I'm excited to see his honor continue.
That's beautiful. My favorite Steve story, Steve was our treasurer at the Griffiss Institute. And he, I get ideas, as you can tell, and get very excited about them. And I was sitting next to Steve at our conference table, and my body language is like turned this way, and I'm talking about some of the things we're talking about right now, like, Steve, do you see what we could do? Because there's all these great ideas, and we could turn them into companies, and this is how it could be. And he sits back in his chair, and he says, yeah, you got a lot of energy. And I said, but don't you see what we could do? And so I explain it to him all again, and I'm going a mile a minute. And then I make this point, and I don't think the county executive is with us or his team, but if they were, they will remember this. Part of my grand strategy to start, like building things that you want to do takes time, right? You learn, you fail, you keep trying. And one of my big strategies was, well, we got to get our rent down to $1. That's how we're going to free up the cash to do my big ideas. And Steve's like, yeah, that's not going to work, but you can give it a shot. So he lets me go. I give it a shot. I put in this big production. Remember, Tracy, remember the big production, all this bravado to pitch to the county why the facility, everything should work like this. And Tony was like, no. And I went back and said, Steve, Tony said no. And he's like, I told you he was going to say no, but you crazy Lebanese, you got to run in here, run around. So that was how Steve let us try. So he knew so much about how things would work and wouldn't. Mm-hmm. He let us all play in a sandbox that he had a vision for to call his own, and I loved working with him. Miss him all the time. And I think with that, it's time for me to pass it back to Sean and thank our panel for an awesome. I feel like we could have done this all night long. So great job.
Thank you, Heather. It's rewarding in my life that Steve was my mentor. And I remember my first year I worked for him. I said 2 words to him. I don't even know if I said the 2 words, hello and goodbye. And it's, you were intimidated by him because he was so brilliant. But he would take time, he would take you along. So the word I would use for Steve is passion. We're the champions of the community, he always would say. And it's, having this panel here speak brings back sitting and doing those interviews for the video we did for Steve. And it's amazing you hear those same trends and those same stories we heard from the people who worked with him for 30, 40 years. So he is well missed. There's times I'll walk through the office late at night, and yeah, I've become like Steve, I'll work late, but it's because we do it because we believe in this community. And so I thank these panelists, your organizations, yourself personally, for sharing that. I do want to give a shout out to all my EDGE board members that are here, thank you for supporting us as a staff and allowing us to do what we do. And I've always said to every time we brought somebody new on, you have one of the best jobs in Oneida County. You don't know what you're gonna do when you come in the morning. Well, you think you know, but you never will. Because the challenges we're faced with are for tomorrow. And you will see the benefits of your labors. And it's so great to drive around, take your kids in the car, and you're like, oh yeah, I had something to do with that. But you start saying it like, oh yeah, I did that, but today I gotta work on something else. Steve was one of the most humble people that you will ever meet. And I always remember him saying, when, Wolfspeed happened and the announcement with Cree and, the announcements that your organization said, yeah, well, okay, we did that, but move on. We got something else to do today. And so, what I love is that we're celebrating Steve. And the one thing I would want to tell the community is we need to celebrate our successes. And I want you to leave tonight. I want you to go tell a success story to somebody tomorrow, because you are the messengers to take the opportunity to grow this community and make people excited to be here, because we do have that. And so Diane, Tracy, Bobby, Corey, and Allison, thank you for sharing Steve with us for all those years. And I think, you can drive around and see those things that, he had that success of making this community a great place. So thank you, and we really appreciate what we had with Steve. So I want to welcome Diane up. Diane's working with her children, a passion project that Steve would be so thrilled with. It was always about that next generation. So I want Diane to share what they're accomplishing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. So first, I do want to thank SUNY Poly for hosting this event, for the EDGE staff, for everything that's been done. Mark really was the driving force behind getting all of this here. It was about a year ago when we got together and started brainstorming some ideas, so it's nice to see all of this come about like it has. Thank you to the speakers. I really appreciated hearing. I think you've enlightened us to a lot of what's going on that we may not have known about, and listen to how you're working together. So it's been refreshing hearing all of this. And then, of course, the folks who have sponsored, we've talked about them for NICETech and others who have seen the value in supporting an event like this for the community. And then for everybody who's come here tonight to spend a couple hours to listen to these ideas that we've come up. For you people who may not know, I've got two of my kids here and their spouses, Allison and Corey Peters, Bob and Tracy DiMeo, and then my third son lives in Florida. I did hear a slight reference to Florida, so maybe there's a little connection there, but he and his wife live in St. Petersburg. So I just wanted to do real quick a little background about Steve. For people who may not know a whole lot about him, many of you do, but he grew up in East Utica, graduated from Proctor High School, was the first person in his family to attend and graduate from college. He went to University of Albany, not SUNY Poly, but this was before there was a SUNY Poly, but he was very proud of his connection that he had to the SUNY system. And then he went on to get his master's degree at Georgia State University in Atlanta, and really spent his whole career in urban planning and economic development. I don't know if this graphic up here was intentional, but I think it's appropriate that the graphic kind of shows what his life work was really based upon. So one thing I did want to say, in lots of ways, Steve was kind of the inside baseball of economic development. So people who knew Steve can appreciate the relevance of using baseball as an analogy. But there's strategy, there's analytics, there's managerial challenges, there's playing as a team, and then there's even yelling at an umpire once in a while. But all of this can translate from baseball to working in economic development. So, and as many as has been said already, you know, he was the person behind the scene working on the numbers, meeting with the political representatives, negotiating contracts, tackling different projects. And he wasn't necessarily aiming for a grand slam, but he was playing small ball to get the job done. But certainly looked for home runs now and then, and he got a few. So when he passed away, that of course left a void in our family, in his work family, and I think in the whole community. So it has been mine and my family's vision to find ways to fill that void by supporting ways to mold new leaders, a new generation of leaders in this community, people who can encapsulate that multidisciplinary approach that Steve really effortlessly lived. And this evening is one way of doing that. I think we heard a lot of ideas tonight. We talked about the importance of research and how it's not a one-shot deal and it's not a quick fix. It's important, and we need to value that. The importance of partnerships, people working together and collaborating, mentoring, and I'm glad that you kind of ended the whole conversation around mentoring, because that is something that really can help, I believe, develop leaders and young people into moving into the direction that we're all envisioning as you describe what you want to see in 10 years. Both Steve and I had opportunities to have great mentors in our careers, and sometimes it was just somebody taking you under your wing, sometimes it was more of a formalized approach, but that mentorship is really critical in making sure that we have the kind of community that we want our kids and our grandkids to grow up into. So Steve was a man of action, and tonight we had a lot of, gave us some inspiration, got some wheels churning, I'm hoping, and generate some tangible follow-up activities. We have established a fund that would help develop, do some scholarships for students who are attending SUNY Poly who have gone to Proctor. But I think there's some, and I don't have any of this planned out yet, but I think there's some opportunities to go beyond scholarships. Scholarships are great, and it's one mechanism, but I think there's some other ways that we can build that infrastructure to help develop the kinds of things that all of you have talked about in getting in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 20, what was it, would you say 20? I think we put out 10. We said 20. 10 years, yeah. So again, thank you for everybody for coming. Really appreciate your support. Hope you're able to help support the initiatives that either are out there or that we hope to get out there. Any ideas, we love to hear, and thank you again for all that you've done, and thanks.
So Heather, like you, I would come up with the crazy ideas, and he would just look at me and walk and go get a cup of coffee. And but guess what I learned? Don't give up. You keep going back and you do it again. I want you all to give a round of applause to our moderator and panelists. Thank you. Mark, thanks for sticking with it. I have to give a little history here. Mark and I were told not to do this, and he just kept going. And Steve would be proud of you, because you saw the vision, you saw what it would accomplish. And Diane, I already have some ideas. So, I love that we did end with mentors, and I had that mentor. So the more we could do that for this community, it's really important. We have people in this room who knew Steve for years. Go tell those stories, because that's a loss to our community, and he would want us to keep going and keep doing what we're doing. So thank you everybody for coming tonight. Drive safe, and contribute to the scholarship fund. He'd be very happy with that. So thank you everybody. Have a good night.